for being at the Public Safety Committee. Today we're going to be receiving a briefing on community policing, and we're going to ask the other side of the table, not that we necessarily on two different sides of the table here, but if we could ask the other side of the table to please introduce themselves.
Good morning. I am Acting Chief Marcus Jones, and thank you all for having us this morning.
Good morning. I'm Acting Chief of Police Dinesh Patil from our Management Services Bureau.
You have the special touch. Good morning. I'm Captain Sonia Pruitt. I'm the Director of the Community Engagement Division.
Very good. Well, thank you all for being with us. And I guess Susan will lead us through the packet. Is that what you'd like to do?
Yes, I'm just going to actually just provide a very brief overview, and then the police department is going to go right into the briefing. But basically, community policing is when police engage with community partners in a true partnership to help prevent crime, solve crime, and address other types of public safety concerns that the community may have. And they meet with all different types of community groups, from schools to homeowners associations to businesses, and so on. And the police staff here today will give you a much more detailed, in-depth view of all the different types of initiatives that they take.
Okay. Good morning again. So this morning we are going to present what our community policing model looks like in our philosophy, which again, we look at community policing as a philosophy, not a program. It is not that we have sort of a template of exactly how this is done, but there are things that go to our mission on each and every day that we emphasize throughout all facets, throughout of our department. And this morning, Acting Assistant Chief Dinesh Patil, who oversees our Management Services Bureau, is actually going to do the presentation. Unfortunately, Assistant Chief Laura Lanham, who oversees our Patrol Services Division, which oversees the Community Engagement Division, which is one facet, and it's a very large component of what we do, but it's not all of what we do. And we want to make sure people are clear that the Community Engagement Division, which was brought back, years ago we had a division that was actually cut back in the recession. Chief Manger unfortunately had to cut under our community operations division that was more related to community services that did a lot of this type of outreach back. And we just realized that there was a great need to bring this division back. And we have brought it back, and we have really kind of embraced it and had it to grow in a way that has had some significant impact throughout our department. But it's just the one arm of where we are as it relates to community engagement, when we have each district station that has community services officers, that have officers that are under the direction of the district commanders that are actually going out and doing different types of community engagement along with the officers that are assigned in those patrol divisions. We also have other units that also do that type of work, even in our investigative ranks and even in our special operations. So Acting Assistant Chief Patil will give you the presentation, and we'll be more than happy to answer the questions that you may have.
Good morning. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I hope today I can convey and share and maybe brag even a little bit about some of the great initiatives that we have underway, and understand that our philosophy comes from the standpoint that we know we have a large community, a diverse community, and there's not, like Chief Jones said, there's not one template, there's not one model that you can just address and put over here and go, oh, that's community policing. It's ever evolving. I think it's a living concept and philosophy, because it's different. The way we police and the way of the community's needs are different as the years go by. So I'm going to hopefully walk you through what we do, how we do it, and just understand that we're always looking to evolve and get better and try different things. Community policing has been part of our DNA, our department's DNA, since I can remember. I came on over 25 years ago, and we absolutely had blocks of instruction in the academy even back then about what is community policing and problem-oriented policing, referred to as POP. That was a little bit of a catchphrase back in the day, but it really was about getting in the community, finding what the problems are that need solving beyond just crime fighting, but what are the other underlying issues where we can help and improve the quality of life And there was a model and several models that talked about how to accomplish that. But that, for me, even as a police explorer years and years ago before becoming a police officer here, it was a formalized part of who we are and even were starting back then, over 25 years ago, which seems odd to say, but somehow 25 years has gone by.
Happens in a hurry.
It does. So we realized, again, going back to philosophy, that we can't do this alone, that we have to work with the community because we not only are we incapable by numbers of solving all the world's problems, that to really solve problems, get to the core issues, to make a society better, it takes everybody in different approaches and concepts and just different hands to make the change happen and truly understand it happen. We can't just come out going forward with, oh, here's how we think things should be done. A big part of community policing and our philosophy, good morning, sir, is really listening to the community and understanding what their needs are, because the needs in one neighborhood in the Upper County may be very different from the needs down in Silver Spring, where I spent most of my career. So we understand that we need to work with the community to make that change happen. In the past 15 years, former Chief Manger embraced community policing. It wasn't new, but I'd say he enhanced the efforts that we had underway. In particular, like Chief Jones had mentioned, although through budget cuts years ago, we had to look at what our essential services were back then, and we lost the Community Services Division. It's been brought back. We'll speak more to Captain Pruitt, as the recent newly appointed or directed leader of that group, and we're looking forward to great things continuing to come out of it. But we also understand that community policing, for anything to be successful, it has to start at the top, right? If it's not led from the top all the way down, it won't work. And that has been at the foundation of who we are for as long as I can remember. We do it at several levels throughout our organization. The Chief's Office maintains active involvement in advisory committees, two in particular with the Hispanic Liaison Committee and the African American Liaison Committee. And there's regular meetings, and I can tell you, having attended many of those, it's more listening than it is talking. It's us hearing from the community. We certainly have an agenda. We talk about the different things that are hot topics at the moment or questions that they have. But it's very, very, very much a listening session and a collaborative process. And those relationships over the years have helped to build trust and understanding. Each week in our what we call our MCP stat, which is our statistical review of how are we performing, what's going on both in the community from a crime fighting standpoint, but also the community standpoint. And so we look at, we evaluate where the crimes have happened, what's going on, what trends may be out in the community, both in Montgomery County but regional wide. And we look towards, okay, are we doing everything that needs to be done? Are there, trend lines that are going up? And we will then direct our efforts, if we need to take officers from other units or districts, move around to address the problem. But every meeting, or every week that we have that meeting, it ends with each district talking about at length, what have they done in the past week with community policing efforts? What meetings are you attending? What outreach are you doing? What do you have on deck? And we try to not only surely ensure that it's happening the way we want it to happen, but we also have the districts look at each other and go, hey, you know what, that's a really good idea. I have a Target in my area, and maybe I didn't realize the Target store will partner with you. And so we build upon, I kind of look at it as this ever-growing blob that we take ideas from one another, we see what works, and we evolve and then we adapt. So it's there's a lot of different things that we have to be aware of in a given week, from overtime, crime efforts, or the crime lab, everything. There's a lot that goes into a major police organization. But every week we end it on community policing, and we focus on, okay, well, what have you done and what are you doing? We spoke about how in 2016, Chief Manger brought the Community Engagement Division back, again, led by Captain Pruitt. It's our central point for community policing, not that they do it all. Community policing isn't a one division, one officer, one team, but they are leading our central effort of really looking, I think, at the next level, not certainly community policing is in the field and on the street, but to look systemically throughout our organization, to think through strategies, come up with ideas, make sure we have the right funding that we need. And I think a great part of the job that I think Captain Pruitt's going to find is it's one of the things that you can just try stuff, see if it works. If it doesn't work, let's try something else. And I think you're going to see a lot of that coming down the pike, especially as we lead in the summer and the next school year. There's not a one-fit solution. So we're looking forward to more things from that division. And they really help coordinate also our school resource officers and the district-level community policing officers. The school resource officers are an example, are one of the best examples of, I think, a link right into the youth, our community. So much of what happens in a school is directly tied either back or forth to the communities which these kids come from. And a school resource officer for many kids can be maybe the only interaction they ever have with law enforcement. And so it's a real opportunity for our SROs or school resource officers to go in and mentor, working with the parents, the staff, and the students to help gain a better understanding, not only of what we do, but hopefully be a positive role model. So to have that in every one of our high schools is great. I know we're expanding also into middle school, so I think you'll see even greater efforts. For as long as I can remember, and I'm certainly sure a little bit longer, we've had a community service officer in every district whose sole job is to make sure that we're connected with the community, we're meeting their needs, trained in both crime prevention, outreach, as well as problem solving. I say a lot of times there may be issues that it isn't necessarily a police department issue. It might be permitting. There might be some crisis intervention that needs to occur, but often the police department, by the nature of who we are 24/7, we tend to be the people who have the right contact information. We have the right skills and ability to be able to kind of bring a team together. So we often find ourselves in things that may not be a police issue, but if we help solve it, we can improve safety, we can improve quality of life, and maybe reduce calls for service for us so we can be on other tasks. But those community service officers are the experts in the field of making those connections for problem solving, and then being the point of contact for the community whenever they need. It could be as simple as having a Boy Scout troop or Cub Scouts come through for a tour, something pretty simple and easy to do, to helping solve problems with somebody in a mental health crisis, and they are a conduit. Some of our districts have more than one community service officer. If especially a place like Silver Spring that has a whole bunch of police officers, a whole bunch of citizens, and a lot of different issues from business community to suburbia. So we have enhanced that program in certain districts where there actually is more than one. We also have several district-level community advisory committees where we have members of the community that sit and work with the district commander to, again, always understanding where we're coming from, but at the same time give us feedback. Are we doing things right? Are we, is there a better way to do it? And what are the needs? And one of the things I'll brag about a little bit in the 6th district is I was assigned to the 6th district prior to this role I'm in now. And I asked my citizens advisory committee, I said, what can we do to do better community engagement, do better outreach? Because I don't have all the ideas. I don't have all the solutions. And we came up with which I loved, was that we came up with a very simple plan that they came up with. Said, what if we go out on Halloween, and you guys go out on Halloween and you end up in a community? Well, what if we joined you as part of the Citizen Advisory Committee? So MedImmune, one of their employees sits on this committee. They actually helped. We did an event at MedImmune on Halloween, and then we were also able, their employees, MedImmune's they want to come out and also be engaged. They had employees come out with us in our police cars with some giveaways and some candy. We ended up at the Cider Mill community as one of our stops with some folks from HHS, and it was fun. The lights weren't working in the parking lot, and we literally had the headlights on our cars, and we had music going, and we were able to bring an idea from this committee, just people from our community, supported by a great company like MedImmune that was able to come and give some stuff that the kids love, some glow sticks. And then us and HHS and the kids are dancing in the parking lot, having fun safely on Halloween. So that's one really small example of a lot of ways to get feedback and build off. Again, we don't have all the answers, and those committees work very well. We also work with our Regional Services Committee. Kathy Matthews is my contact up north, and a great collaborator and a person that brings us all together, and we're able to sit with those groups and committees and go, okay, we usually provide an update, here's what's going on. We also get that feedback, what the concerns are, and then how can we address it. Our district community action teams, which were funded several years ago with the idea of providing officers that could be in the community in areas that have particular issues going on and could work on that, both from a crime fighting standpoint and the standpoint of, okay, again, how can you problem solve? How can you do outreach, mentor, and make a place better instead of just running in and out of it, running 911 calls, being able to go into a place and take a minute and get to know people and build those connections and help them solve problems. One example, not quite DCAP, but our 4th District Central Business District Unit recently came up with a plan in downtown Wheaton for doing alcohol education and enforcement. We're having issues related to alcohol with people coming out of some of the bars and fights and things going on, pedestrian safety, all sorts of issues that sometimes can come obviously with a heavy commercial area and intoxication. And the team worked with the business community down there to help build out some solutions. And again, it's having the time and the resources and the model and philosophy to say, okay, hey, what's the issue, and let's get to it. You could go in there all day long, right? Run a 911 call, make an arrest, come back out. But you're not going to solve the problem doing it that way, and we understand that. We've been good, and you'll see it on one of the slides on our social media. I think one of the things that we've really expanded on is our engagement on Nextdoor as one platform. Nextdoor, we started several years ago, and it was, we didn't exactly know how well it was going to work, but it didn't cost us anything, so let's try it. Communities were starting to latch on to it, and it has turned into a really good way for us to have a communication channel to the community in a two-way form, and that membership has grown and grown and grown, as you'll see visually there, from 49,000 up to 147. And I'll be first to say, the police department does not take all the credit for that, because there's a lot of things that affect people being on Nextdoor. But I do believe we had some part of that, and it's just one other way for us to have contact with the community, be able to post, a video or a photograph or a message. And sometimes it's a crime. Hey, be aware, your car's getting broken into in your neighborhood last night. And sometimes it's an ability to just say, hey, we have a summer camp coming up for kids, or we're recruiting, we're hiring. So it's just one more way in addition to Twitter, Facebook, and many other forms of electronic communication that we are utilizing to increase our presence in the community. I'm sure many of you know we sponsor events for children with autism or intellectual development disabilities. We've been nationally recognized for this program. Officer Lori Reyes is a national leader in helping get awareness to those communities, help them with the problems. Again, if you have a kid that has repeated issues, going and running that 911 call over and over and over for a missing kid or somebody in crisis isn't going to solve the problem. It's getting at the root issues, and Lori has been great at helping the rest of us understand, learn, and then apply the right resources. And again, it's been nationally recognized, and that's just one small piece of what we do. This year will be our 12th year of the Police Adventure Camp, partnering with the Montgomery County Public School System. This camp allows for about 30 campers between the 3rd and 5th grade to understand how the police department works, what policing is all about. We'll show you a video here in just a moment. This program is free. We partner with the business community to help support it and fund certain things that we need, as well as working with several non-NGOs to be able to identify, okay, who's a good candidate to come to this that we can actually help. So I'll let the video kind of speak for itself for a moment, and then we'll keep going. So I can fill in for Mike Prather, who is Mike was the community service officer for the 1st District. He's in he's a community service officer, in the 1st District. He was actually my police academy school class 25 years ago. And this camp, basically we are able to bring in different units from the police department, K-9, the command staff, investigators, and really act as both mentoring, giving them some awareness, having some fun. It's camp, it's summer camp, right? So in the middle of this, they're having a good time. They're getting to know each other. They're getting some, what I like to call the life lessons of understanding, good decision making, and how to be good citizens, and understanding, what policing is all about. So that's Commander Frank there. So it's one of the camps. It's been nationally recognized by the, I believe, it's the National Association of Counties. It's also received an award from the governor's office. And it does take a lot of work to make that happen. Like any kind of, logistical event like that, you can try to get 30 kids in a room. It's herding cats, and there's a lot of pieces. How are you going to get people there? How are you going to get them home? How are you going to feed them? All these different things. But in a way, it's simple, right? It's bringing cops and the community together and every kid gets a certificate, a graduate certificate again, because they've learned something, they've evolved, and they come out of it at the end. We have another camp coming up also this year for 8th graders going into 9th grade down in our 2nd district, where we're going to be doing much of the same things, and also taking field trips down to the FBI Museum, the Law Enforcement Museum, and some other places to again, just broaden people's horizons and perspectives and build. And you could spend a week with somebody, right? You're going to get to know them. I'm about to go into Leadership Montgomery next year, and I know how much time, you sit in, right? And everything I've heard from people is that you really get to know people and get a better understanding, because you do get to spend time, maybe put the phone away, right?
And where did you actually hold the camp?
So they've been held at different elementary schools.
But it's in Montgomery
Yeah.
County.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
I
Oh,
know.
absolutely.
This is in the Twin Brook community, and so this is down. We've had it down at Twin Brook Recreational Center, and we've also held it over at Twin Brook Elementary School. So
And the plane, was that your new plane since you've been?
I have acquiesced the new plane. Yes, thank you.
Well, now, so you took them to a museum. What was the
Yeah,
plane
so we went
from?
to the Air and Space Museum.
I got you.
So, and maybe for some of these kids that never would have been on the the menu. I don't know. So it's just one more unique opportunity. I think it's part of what makes Montgomery County great is that it's an opportunity for people to engage with us, and we can do something fun. I having grown up in the DC area, I went there. I went to all these museums. When anybody from out of the country came in, you go back and
Absolutely.
So for me, I'm a little overdone on it, but it does strike me. It's something fun that maybe they would or wouldn't do at school, but you get to do it, and you're walking around with a police officer that you're building a relationship with, and I think understanding police officers as humans and building that trust. Our community policing events are posted on Data Montgomery, like much of our activities that we do through our transparency efforts. We have over 4,000 events listed, and we have a list, and it's a partial list is on the PowerPoint. But whether it's civic association meetings, Cub Scout meetings, tours to our stations, church events, mentoring at the middle schools, we do a thing called Lunch Bunch, where we'll just go and sit and eat lunch with kids in elementary school, and it's very simple, and it doesn't take a lot, but the value that you get out of that. I could sit here for a day and just talk about all the different things, because some of them are informal and some of them are a little bit more formal. But to date this year, including our recruiting events, we've attended 1,210 such outreach events, and that number has steadily gone up. And we just started tracking that in 2016, so when you see some of the numbers, you might say, hey, what was going on? And with any data capturing, there's always the rub of trying to make sure you're catching it accurately and reminding people, hey, we have to make sure we're getting it. We often do a very good job of doing the work and sometimes need to work harder on capturing that effort. On an informal basis, our officers interact with people every single day. We just recently had an event. We may interact with somebody on a call for service or a traffic stop, sure, we all understand that. But we have these informal things that happen where an officer will just see an opportunity or somebody in need, and whether it's changing a tire, which we did for like a Channel 9 news person recently that needed some help, and that got that, or we're literally in the process right now of trying to track down an officer who a community member came to us and said, this cop just happened to be at Costco coming in and out or whatever's going on, and I was in need, I had all this stuff, and the cop ends up helping this lady load her car up. And she was like, I was so thankful, but I never got the officer's name. And we get these stories on a fairly regular basis, and there's a lot of these informal contacts where we don't necessarily have statistical tracking, but they occur every day. There were some questions that had come up on the information that we were provided prior to coming here, and so I want to try to address some of those. And one of them was along the lines of, should our officers be encouraged to live in the districts that they work in? And we certainly understand the value of police being closely tied to their community and the people that they serve. But there's a lot of different things that address or affect where people live. First of all, one of the things, especially with an agency our size, is that officers get transferred from time to time, whether it's that we transfer them from an operational need, from a staffing standpoint, or they get assigned because they've been selected for a specialized unit like SAT team or major crimes. People do move around. Also, like any person, they're going to make their housing decisions based on what their needs are individually, where their family is, their support network, how much housing they can afford, and I think that our numbers are generally speaking in line with where the county is about, as I can understand, about 45% of our permanent workforce across county government lives out of the county. And I, having been born and raised here and lived here my whole life, continue to, like, I do understand the value of working and living in the same place. So I think it's something we can continue to work on. There was a mention in one of the notes that we had about what used to be called the Officer Next Door program. Now I think the Housing and Urban Development calls it the Good Neighbor program. As I understand it, for those, so that program would incentivize police officers, teachers, firefighters, different people who in public service to purchase a home in certain communities at a highly discounted price. For that to happen, in my understanding, it has to be in what's designated a federally revitalized area or revitalization area. There are things that have to happen to make that happen. To my understanding, the Montgomery County does not have any revitalization areas designated. So that's something I think that could be on the radar. It used to absolutely exist. I know down in Piney Branch area, a friend of mine years ago, when we first came on, had purchased a home in that way. So that's something on the radar, I think, for consideration as a government in a whole. Certainly. Any initiatives that the council, would present, I think we can all evaluate to see whether there's, outcomes and value in doing that. But we're just part of where we are right now is that people do move around, so it'd be hard to say, okay, hey, you're living in this community, and it'd be hard to guarantee that police officer could stay there for any measurable amount of time before their next assignment. There was also a question about recruiting of bilingual officers. Recruiting in general has been very challenging, and I'm happy to get into more of that, and I will here in a moment. But specifically in this area, Chief Manger had worked for 2 legislative sessions with Senator Cheryl Kagan on legislation to allow permanent legal residents who are honorably discharged from the armed forces to apply to become police officers. The bill passed. It was kind of a watered-down version, as I understand it, but I think it was an opening to build on what was accomplished. And we're taking considerable steps to try to enhance our diversity recruiting across the board. A pay differential for bilingual officers was an idea that was mentioned. Anything like that would certainly have to be negotiated as part of the union contract. But I will say is under one of my divisions under my bureaus is personnel and recruiting, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. But anything that will help in the recruiting effort, I'll paint a little bit more of a picture here, is certainly appreciated. Another question came up was whether our officers are evaluated on the number of arrests or citations they issue. We do not have any quotas or minimums that people have to, like, oh, you have to have these many tickets or else, or you get this, score in your rating. We look at anything measurable to try, like you would in any, I think, organization, to try to understand, hey, are we spending our time effectively? But there's in an officer's evaluation, they're evaluating on the whole of what they do, and a great deal of that, can be, community policing. Are you doing investigations? How are you, helping on the overall picture? You may spend a number of your hours in a week on doing traffic investigation. So there's a lot of different things to go. What goes in there? So solely basing it on numbers of arrests or tickets are not what officers are evaluated on. It's hard as we talk about those informal contexts of community policing to really assign a number to that. And so we know that our officers are having those conversations every day. But we're pretty good, I think, getting our formal efforts enumerated. But how to get those informal contacts is a little bit harder. So again, that's not something you're going to see in a performance evaluation. Hey, did you have, X number of these contacts? That's kind of hard to grab. But tickets and arrests are not the evaluating factors for police officers. One of the other questions, or on the potential questions list, and I'm happy to just go through these real quick of what questions you may have, or how are police officers trained in community policing? As I stated, we train in the police academy during their initial recruit training. Often, officers, when they get into field training, will be assigned to a community police officer for a few days or a week to understand that job, go to community events, and really understand why that interaction is important to the overall mission. There was also a question about youth mentoring that we do. In addition to the state's attorney's office truancy prevention program, we talked about the police adventure camp. We also, and we watched the video. We talked about the other camp coming up. There's also a great deal of mentoring that occurs in the high schools and some of our elementary schools. We have several officers that, in their off time, not part of necessarily what the police department effort is, but they're cops who also happen to be coaches. I coached girls on a run this last year, and when I pull up my police car, if I'm wearing one of my shirts, or even when I'm giving a lesson, I try to relate it back to policing. So these kids who, again, maybe may or may not have had an interaction with the police, now all of a sudden go, oh yeah, my girl's on a run coach is a police officer, and he said blah blah blah. So there are a lot of those interactions that are occurring informally, but the vast majority of our community policing efforts, when you look at the number of people we touch, are youth-based. And for all the right reasons. We, want to be able to, keep kids and have their time occupied by positive things, be a positive role model. I know years ago, and I'm going to forget the name, sir, when there was the after-school program we had where we had Department of Rec, as we're working on our positive youth development program, where we put money and efforts towards the soccer camps and different things that kids could do in those hours, where we really saw an increase in police calls for service and crime because kids were getting out of school and maybe didn't have a positive thing to do. So we see us fitting into that whole realm. We talked about the video and talked about the 9th grade camp. Another question that had come up was, are we doing community policing where and when we need to be doing it, right? If we schedule community policing at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, who are we talking to? And I'll be first to tell you, and we have done that for sure. Coffee with the Cop, when we first started doing it, people drink coffee in the morning, let's get out there. And the first thing I realized when I did my first one, I was like, okay, well, today, because I did it at, let's say it was 8 to 10 a.m. or something, I met with the retirees and stay-at-home parents that were, available to come to that. And we recognized pretty quickly, okay, and we heard from the community. We could also see it ourselves. Okay, we need to be doing these things, our proactive outreach things, on the weekends, in the evenings. We recently did one in 6th District where we partnered with McDonald's on 355 in Odenhall. They had a family night. So we said, what a great night. You're already doing things to incentivize families to come in and have some fun. So we partnered with them. The kids were able to do activities and crafts and kind of have some fun, and the parents got a hot second to come over and talk with us and have a relationship. So we're absolutely always aware and evolving, learn from our mistakes. Certainly, Coffee with the Cop was one of the things that, I think in the early morning ones, we thought we'd hit the commuters. Well, the reality is the commuters have to commute. They have to get to work. They can't sit around and talk all day. So we have adapted some of those programs, and we're a 24/7, 365 organization. So that's built into our DNA. A lot of our events that we do are weekend-based. They're evening event-based. Especially the Civic Association meetings, they're all in the evening, right? Everybody's got to work when we come home. So we're always looking to improve, and we're taking that feedback and adapting our events as such. And our posture, generally speaking, I can certainly say in the 6th District, and I think throughout the county, is, because this is how I was trained as a police commander, if somebody invites you, you say yes. And then you figure out how to make it happen. And sometimes it's overtime or realigning priorities, but the goal is always to say yes. And even if that means 2 community members show up to that meeting, because for some reason we're going to be there, and that's been our goal going forward. Another question that came up, was just having more police officers, relate to better community policing. And I think it's not lost on anybody. It's a conversation that's happened here before. If you look at our number of officers, per capita and the growing, community and the population, having more resources is certainly always going to help. But, that's certainly a function for, Chief Jones and the executive work on budget priorities. But, we're doing, we certainly don't let our foot off the pedal as relates to community policing. Based on what our staffing levels are. We're going to make it work, and we always do. And kind of lastly, talking about recruiting was listed as one of the questions. What are we doing to increase diversity amongst our sworn police force? And one of the things that we do is that we use our community events that are often in communities that we're invited to use that also as a springboard to have the conversation about recruiting. The 5th District, as an example, recently had gone to they did a Coffee with the Cop at the Islamic Society of Germantown. They said, hey, well, let's take our recruiting stuff with us and use that as an opportunity to have that conversation. We've attended several different job fairs that I think target this question. The Maryland Career Consortium at Morgan State University, the Bilingual Latino Diversity Job Fair in D.C. In 2018, the Asian American Business Summit and Expo in Silver Spring, the Diversity Law Enforcement Career up in Philadelphia, Bowie State College and Internship Fair, Women in Law Enforcement Career Fair in Howard County, and many more. And our new director of our personnel division is Nick Augustine, and he's come in with a fresh set of eyes and is absolutely looking like, okay, well, what do we need to do? How can we do it? We're also facing, and I'm happy to, if the committee would like a presentation at another date on our recruiting efforts and challenges, happy to do that. But right now, just to paint the picture a little bit, we're in very low unemployment rates in the D.C. metro area. There's been a lot of focus in the media over last several years, about law enforcement that I think has turned some people away of a career of service. Then you couple with that hiring incentives from other jurisdictions that are throwing bonuses and different things, and these kids look at that and they go, oh, okay, well, you know what, I'm gonna go over here. We have about half the number of applicants that we did when I was a personnel director 6 years ago. So we are absolutely having to double down on our efforts to go, okay, what can we do differently? How can we get to places? One of the things that we just did recently, we have a lot of people historically that have come out of the University of Maryland system. But we typically will say, hey, here's what we're testing. Come to us, come to us, come to us. And Captain Augustine said, hey, you know what? Let's take the test to them. And we did. So we took it on a road show, and we went down to the University of Maryland. I think we had about 30 to 40 students come in, and we were able to bring recruiting to them and actually take that first step into the process. So again, happy to continue that conversation either here or at a later date in greater detail. But we are facing the same challenges of recruiting nationally that's going on, and we're working very hard. Our target number for this first class coming up in August is 37. We are digging in deep to try to get that done. But as an example, I heard recently that Prince George's County had a class with 6 recruits. And that's something that, that's not sustainable for any organization. People are going to leave, they're going to retire. And so we need to kind of have all hands on deck for that. So I'll certainly answer any questions, or if Chief Jones has any.
Well, I don't want that one to be the last thing you said, and there's a few other things we want to chat about. But I think the committee would like to have an update on recruiting. Yeah, if we can schedule that, please.
Absolutely.
Did you have something else to?
No.
And Captain, did you?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. You've been in the job for what? Is it for this part?
About 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah.
So you pretty much have solved everything.
Got it all
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
But first, thank you all for the update, and thank you for being here. I can tell you that I was writing some notes as you were chatting, but the truancy prevention program, I was just at the graduation. I don't know if anybody else here was at it, but you might have been. Will, were you there? I'm not sure. I see everybody at so many different events. I can't remember for sure. But it really is a wonderful program. It gets some of our young people who need a little bit extra motivation to be motivated. And there's a real sense of pride, which is a wonderful thing. And it's a partnership between Montgomery County Public Schools, the state's attorney's office, and the police. And it really hopefully has turned some people around. I know that my wife actually was involved in some ways with that as well. So, and years ago we had the DARE program where a police officer, I think it was 4th grades, and that they would go in and talk to the 4th graders or whatever grade it was, and in those days it was about drugs, obviously, but whether or not, and I know that everything has to do with money. I mean, there's not one thing that doesn't in this, but whether or not there's programs like that we should be looking at to see what we can do and how we can be, to work with that. Go ahead, please, Chief.
Yeah, Councilman Katz. There are still officers who are DARE trained. In fact, Officer George Stevens is a DARE instructor. He actually instructs on and training other officers to be DARE. We've run not as an official department program because we've lacked the resources over the last few years to be able to run that program. But we have had those officers who are trained, who have run programs out of elementary schools, i.e. in Silver Spring. And I know I have a couple of officers that are up county that have worked with certain schools specifically to be able to run some classes out of those particular grades in order to effectively run the program. So it's something that we continuously are going to look at about the ability that we could expand it. And how we maybe can even get to a point of having a pilot, because it takes us taking officers who are assigned to our patrol division, for example, and some of the instructors are assigned to other positions. I think one such instructor works out of our recruitment office. But the point being is that we'd have to take them away from some of their duties in order for them to go into the classrooms. But the good news is many of them are willing to do that. They're willing to take on those extra responsibilities and to do just that.
Good. We talked about the number of officers, and I guess we got some statistics, not in this packet, but tomorrow's packet, but that I think it's Montgomery County, we have 12 police officers per 10,000 population. Am I right?
Ballpark, we have a sworn complement of 1304, and we just added some for the FY20 budget, so I can get you the more accurate numbers after this work session. So it's about 12 officers per 10,000 capita.
And that doesn't count the municipal officers, I'm assuming.
No, this was back the envelope.
That would be another 100 or so, 120, 25 or whatever it would be, 150. But then other jurisdictions with similar, and I'm doing this from memory, so this is always dangerous, but other jurisdictions with similar populations, they can be as high as 20 per 10,000?
That's the average that I got from governing.
But I think it would be helpful, and it doesn't have to be for tomorrow, but I think it would be helpful to know for crime rates as well. Because in some cases we're not comparing apples to apples here, and I think, though, I do know that perhaps we can say that we're understaffed in certain areas, that we need to figure out what our investments should be and and work towards it. We're not going to have the money the first hour, but work towards it and get that blueprint. To the presentation, when we were talking about that when you go to various events and you see that someone cares, that's really a huge part of what we do. I remember from years back that they always talked about if someone had a broken window in a business and no one fixes it, that it just causes another window to be broken. Or if somebody throws litter on a parking lot, nobody picks it up, it just causes more litter. Trash gets more in that spot because it's just nobody cares. I can throw mine too. I can throw this rock too. And I think we have to make certain that we're doing that if we see something that, and Mark Elridge talks about that we shouldn't be in silos, and for instance, truancy prevention proves we're not in silos. I mean, it's various groups working together. But I think that's certainly very necessary in the people. And if it's a street light out, somebody should notify somebody to fix that street light. You all are out there to do that. And then just a couple other things. And you went through the questions, and I appreciate you doing that. But the whole idea of about whether or not someone is judged by how many arrests they make or whatever they're doing. And I understand, and I haven't seen it, but I've heard that there's a board on a wall someplace that has, people, what kind of work they've done and type of things that they've done. But I do think that we need to make certain that there's a column on there for community policing. I don't know that we necessarily need the board on the wall, sure. But if we do, that there needs to be a column for the community policing. To me, that is truly prevention. It absolutely is. And if that young person in school or in the school resource officers are a great example of this, if that young person in the school feels that they're comfortable with that officer, and I go back to the Clarksburg incident where a student went to the school resource officer and told them they knew of somebody or had heard of someone that had a gun in that school, and the school resource officer obviously handled it and everybody ended up being safe. but that student didn't call 911. Right. That student knew to speak to a person that he trusted, to the person that he realized was going to make certain he stayed safe during it, and so we saved lives. We saved lives. Let me say it that clearly. So I think that's one other thing. And then this morning we were handed and I guess all of us got it at the same point, the information from the ACLU about police harassment in the county, and that there's a jump in on-street searches for marijuana, et cetera, and giving citations for trespassing, and it's gone up 4 to 5 times in the last 2 years. Is there any? Did you want to comment on that, please?
I could. In going back to the with the officers and the community policing piece and documentation, annually, all of our officers are provided with a rating of their performance. Their supervisors are required to document their performance over the course of a year. They are required not only to kind of keep tabs on what are they doing on a daily basis, and part of that is that's a category or a couple of categories embraces community policing, and it highlights that. And also the supervisor has the ability to in his summary to provide more specifics to that particular officer's performance, and many times those officers get that highlighted in their ratings of their performance, so that command staffs and others that are reviewing their ratings under requirements, they see the actual performance that the officers, and it's acknowledged of the work that they're doing in our community. So I just wanted to make sure that that's highlighted, that we don't keep per se specific numbers. Years ago, there used to be a form called the MCP 16 that we were required, basically supervisors, to keep statistics on how many arrests were made daily, how many tickets you wrote, how many reports you wrote, how many follow-up investigations. It was just basically a line of items that were required. That was, after negotiations with the FOP, that was discarded. We no longer keep that documentation, but it's still a requirement of our supervisors to be able to monitor the performance. We want our officers out doing the work. And one of the things, again, when we have command staff that looks at numbers at times, sometimes we see where people aren't performing at all. They're not giving us anything. And I think it's our duty as executives and as supervisors for this department not to allow and to be accountable to the citizens of this county for safety reasons, for things that are out there. It is a requirement for us to make sure our officers are going out every day, spending their time wisely on things. And again, we don't want them just doing numbers just because we say go out and get 5 tickets today. That's not our direction, shouldn't be our direction of specific numbers, and that's a quota. Okay, so we don't want them going out getting that kind of number, but we want them doing the work. When we have issues like yesterday, we have a fatal collision in Germantown, in Clarksburg area, that basically speed is a factor, and alcohol is probably a factor in that crime. And it is a crime because, unfortunately, a 20-year-old lost his life yesterday. And the requirement is that we don't have officers sitting around not doing anything, not focusing on speed enforcement, not focusing on DUI enforcement, and certain things that where we have public safety needs that need to be addressed. It is incumbent upon all of our officers to be out there doing what citizens would have expected us to do. And so that's just something I wanted to raise as an expectation that the officers know that we're just not allowing it just to you come to roll call and you wait for the phone call, for the actual call to come over the radio. That's reactive policing. That's not proactive policing. Proactive policing, for me, as an example, would have been us being out running laser radar yesterday, maybe being able to slow that gentleman down who, in fact, caused a collision that caused a 20-year-old to lose their life. So that's just a point that I would make. In relation to the statistics as it relates to criminal citations, I would note an asterisk that the Maryland State Legislature, signed by the governor a couple of years ago, signed to decriminalize marijuana. Okay, I will tell you all that we still have a problem with marijuana in this community. It's still not legalized, but it's decriminalized. So by decriminalizing means that individuals who have 10 grams or less are no longer arrested for the possession of marijuana. What they are given, though, are citations. So 2.5 years ago, we weren't providing citations for individuals who were in possession of marijuana. Those individuals were more than likely being arrested. So now, when officers are encountering them in certain situations and they are recovering marijuana, now individuals are given the citations for $25 for, I guess, the first offense and $50 for a subsequent offense. That's why you see, and I believe that there's a large increase in these citations for marijuana. Trespassing, we can go back and look at that more extensively. Again, we are dealing with issues with different locations all throughout the county, different businesses, different apartment complexes, residential areas, where we are actually given the authority as agents of the property, and those in situations where we have individuals that might be causing problems at that particular location, they are being provided with those citations of trespassing. Again, the difference is that they're not being placed in handcuffs. There's no criminal record that's assessed to them. They're actually being given a citation, and then they go forward to the district court to have that matter resolved. So with that being said, that's a little bit of the background as it relates to those increases in citations.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Chief. I appreciate all those answers and the whole presentation on the previous questions. Just to elaborate a little bit, Chief, you said, I think it was during the recession that the community policing approach was cut back and then it was restored. When were both of those events again?
So that was when the Community Services Division was basically dismantled. And so that was back in, I want to say around 2009 to 2010. We had the recession. There were lots of cutbacks in county government. The police department was required to make some drastic cuts as well. Chief Manger made the decision when we looked across the board. And out of the Community Services Division at that point in time, you had DARE, you had community service officers that do similar to what the Community Engagement Division does. So it didn't change, quote, the philosophy of policing. What it did change was that now, instead of many of those programs that were more centralized, that we had monitored and were implementing and doing some other things and partnering with other groups, what it required was that it was now being pushed down to a district level. And so I wouldn't say that it was pushed down in a way that was impactful, because everybody's now got to get acclimated to doing it differently, because that's not the way we have been doing it over the years. And so now it required a little bit more of a challenge on district commands, because they were now the requirement to actually do a lot more community policing and engaging with some partners that the Community Services Division have been handling prior to.
Okay, thanks. So if we could come back to the evaluation and incentive thing, I just want to understand that better. So you used to have an MCP 16 form where officers were graded on number tracked, number of stops, citations, arrests, etc. And that form went away, but you probably still track that, right?
So yeah, there's still a monitoring system. I mean, so basically a supervisor still monitors on a daily basis. Individuals have to come into the station. They report back out they submit their reports to the supervisors for final approval, and the supervisor then sees what that particular employee is doing. But the supervisor also gives out certain responsibilities for that officer to do. So there might be, for example, a community event that's going on in, let's say, an area such as White Oak or Piney Branch Road, and the supervisor actually gives an assignment to say that officer has to go to assist with this particular community doing this particular community event. That's documented, and that's then put in the supervisor keeps notes throughout the year. So it gives the supervisor ability, it can document that they know how many DUI arrests this individual makes, how many felony arrests this individual makes. Because it's fair to the employee. When the employee is going out here working every day, you would want your supervisor, you want credit for what you have done, right? And so it also gives the supervisor the ability to address any shortcomings as well as to address any sort of, if you want to say, over commitment to one given area and not committing to other areas that need addressing based upon direction of supervision. Right.
So I come into, say, 3D a couple years ago when I'm a police officer too, and we go through every day how many citations I issued, how many arrests I may have made. Do I get points for those?
No. No, there are no points given. So again, you have a rating, okay? You have a rating that says you either exceed this particular, and you have different categories. Some of the categories could go into criminal enforcement, it can go into DUI enforcement, it goes into investigations, it goes into community engagement, and in each one of those categories you get rated within it. You get either you exceed the requirement, you meet the requirement, or you're below the requirement, okay, of what's expected. The supervisor goes over with these employees the ratings, at the beginning of the rating period. So at your anniversary date is generally that's the beginning of your rating period. So they're done annually. With our rookies, we do them when they're on probation. They get it done more than annually because we're monitoring them like every 6 months. And so again, it's given direction, it's given expectations about what the supervisor wants out of that particular employee. That's documented. Therefore, that when the rating process is done and it's completed, it goes all the way up through the command. Our ratings are not giving, it does not, it supports promotion, but it's not a part of our promotional process. So example, by you going out making 100 criminal arrests doesn't give you an up on an individual who makes one for an entire year over promotion. Promotions are not done; they're negotiated with the FOP, with our at that level, at the corporal level and the sergeant level, and there is no system that we've developed that gives you these extra points for promotion. So for promotion, you take a promotional process. You take a test. You take a test of multi-choice answers, and of about 125, and then that's rated. Then that's graded, and that's the only thing that's graded as a part of. And then you're ranked as it's promoted. For the rank of sergeant, it requires you to take an additional process called the assessment center, which now you go, it's an oral exam basically. You go before assessors who are not even from Montgomery County. These are assessors that are from other local law enforcement agencies that are trained to basically assess your performance. They then grade you based upon that. That number is then mixed with your multiple choice test score, and then that's where we develop the list of those who are promoted. And we take promotions, then we take them rank in order. So just because I like candidate number 10 better than I like candidate number 1 doesn't give me the authority to promote based upon our contract. I have to go into rank in order for those individuals. For those two ranks, our executive rankings are completely different.
All right, well, that's very helpful because there's a lot of community opinions about how.
I'm sure there are. Yes.
It's helpful to me to sort of know what the deal is.
Absolutely.
Explain it and push back against things that are incorrect. So then, from a management perspective, so a few years ago you're running 3D. Are there expectations you have for or goals for 80% of the time ought to be running calls and doing patrol, and 20% ought to be community policing, or how do you do that?
So, as a manager, and Acting Chief Patel could also, he's performed as a commander as well in the Gaithersburg. We look at what is occurring within our districts as needs, as operational needs, right? What is the community? What are they complaining about? What is going on in our community from a public safety standpoint that needs to be addressed? So, and I'll give an example. So, I may have in the sector, the George sector, which is downtown Silver Spring, maybe and extended out towards the Beltway. So, let's say on Georgia Avenue, I've got some issues with some traffic complaints about people illegally turning during rush hour. Okay, which happens daily, right? And people complain about it daily. So therefore, it's a requirement for me as a commander to make sure that those matters are being addressed. So even though as the officers are staying in service, being ready to respond to calls, those officers might be more designated to handle that traffic issue, okay, that in that area which they're working. So each unit may be given different responsibilities, right? So let's say in the White Oak community, I might be having a different issue. Or Briggs Cheney, I may have a different issue that maybe I'm having a burglary problem in the daytime that's occurring between 9 and 12, right? And we know that. And so I want those officers to be more proactive and visible because the deterrence, we're trying to create a deterrent atmosphere to make sure that if there's individuals who are committing these types of crimes, they see that there's a police presence, and therefore it would divert them to go to another area or not do it at all. And so there's always the responsibility of supervisors on a daily basis. This is what Acting Chief Patel talked about, was that we look at from crime stats weekly to determine what is the focus of where our patrols need to be looking at. So that's a part of what they do. Now you include, right, that you have these other needs of policing or events that are occurring in your district that you may need some assistance with. And so I'll give you an example. So a few years back, I determined, being the commander of the 3rd District, that we had an issue with the gang in East County, okay, that had created some violent acts, and we knew who they were. Right, and working with the Street Outreach Network from HHS, we developed a relationship, and we said, okay, how can we really get to know these guys a little bit better, and maybe kind of calm what's going on that's having some impact in our schools as well as the community. And so what we did was we had a basketball game on one evening, right, and we negotiated, and I brought officers in. I took officers off the street, right, who came up and who volunteered, who wanted to play in the basketball game. They were our midnight officers, they were our evening officers, they were our day work officers. And I had probably a good 25 officers who participated, and we brought the kids in from the middle school. It just wasn't about, but we did it as a community event. And then when we got there, the kids that were part of the gang, they wouldn't even come into the building, right, because they were a little bit nervous of the relationship. But we told them, like, you're not getting arrested tonight. This is not what this is about. This is about us getting to know you, you getting to know us, okay? And we were able to negotiate that, and it worked out as a really, well done, and we developed relationships as a result thereof. That's an example of what I'm talking about. There are always, on a daily basis, the challenges of giving direction about what you want officers to do. We don't say to them, okay, I want you to spend, because there are things that officers might get. I might get a call today, and I say I'm talking to me if I was on the patrol, which I did many moons ago. But if I was on patrol, for example, I might get a call that might warrant 4 hours of my time, okay? So if my supervisor had said to me, I need you to spend 80% of your time doing something, that could have been changed in the moments of a hat. A bad accident that I might have had to stand out in direct traffic for 2 or 3 hours. There are things that happen daily that have an impact on what we do every day. So again, it's directed around what are the issues in our community. How do we deal with them? How do we effectively, answer the complaints that our community members, which comes through you all's office often, as you all know. How do we actually redirect that and to do it in a way that's resourceful and helpful?
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks. If you have any of the forms you use to evaluate officers, that would
We'll be glad to share ratings. Absolutely.
So we could talk about it.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. We'll definitely give you the template of what the expectations for our officers are. Absolutely.
So, well, actually, I want to come back to. I've had officers tell me years ago we used to do more community policing and be able to go say door to door or get rewarded, get incentivized, get points somehow. If we went to more barbecues and PTA meetings, go door to door in a neighborhood, develop relationships, not just of going to events, but just being on foot, knocking on doors, talking to shopkeepers, etc. And that went away. What are they talking about?
Go ahead.
So I'm happy to speak to it, or to the best that I can. I don't think that I can tell you in 25 years we never had an incentive, financial, money, anything that if you do more of this, then you get more of that. I can tell you I worked in the Silver Spring Central Business District unit when it was one of the first iterations when it was formed. And one of the things that we like to have the time to do when we had the resource to do it is we would go do that. And one of the things we used to, and this is a little archaic, but we'd have these business cards on file. And we wanted to know for every business in downtown Silver Spring, hey, if your window gets broken in the middle of the night, who are we calling, right? And we wanted to know who. So during those contacts of forcing the issue, like we need this problem solved of getting business contact info, right. We also had an opportunity for cops to go walk through the door and have a conversation. So we did that. We, I think, continue to want to do things like that, but never can I remember in over 25 years and having worked in those environments with Captain Pruitt as an example, down there, we worked on the same team. There was never an incentive like, if you do this, you're going to get a gift card, Starbucks or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
right. But not professional incentives either. Not
No. And if I could also piggyback on that, I would add that I worked in Silver Spring in 1995 and 96. And then I came back to Silver Spring in 2014. Well, downtown Silver Spring didn't look like downtown Silver Spring when I initially worked there, right? Just a touch, right? And so the increase in the amount of businesses, the increase in the amount of people that not only live in downtown Silver Spring, but now work in downtown Silver Spring, creates an incredible challenge to the officers that work there, where the numbers haven't grown, lock and step with the growth, right? Yeah, the staffing levels, right? No, and I mean, and I'm not just pointing out downtown Silver Spring. I'm talking about across this county in general, where we have been trying to play. When you look at areas like Clarksburg and the growth in Clarksburg or Germantown in the Central Business District area, where we've added officers to work in those areas, but how contacts with business owners, for example, and doing some of those knock on door. I mean, to police in a urban area is a whole lot different than policing in the rural suburban area. And so officers do, as time has gone on, we've had to change those dynamics of what engagement looks at. And so when engagement can look like that, we can have the ability to go and reach larger numbers of people at times versus us knocking one-on-one, as much as we would love to do that. And we've done it in certain circumstances depending upon what's going on. But there's no incentive. And when I say incentive, there's an incentive for our officers to go do it. But there's no reward on the end of that says, you're going to get this as a result of you doing more of this compared to doing other forms of policing. And you don't get rewards on the opposite end of that for those individuals that are making, all of these arrests, as a result. Now, I will say this. Officers who come on this job, everybody has interest. Okay, you have an interest. You have a specific jobs, a focus that you like. So I might, for me, example, when I came up in my career, it was about investigations. Okay, so it involved narcotics. Well, for me to show supervisors that I am interested in working in the narcotics division, I've got to show that I've got some expertise in making narcotics arrests and handling those investigations at the basic level. So it does require me, in that sense, to do narcotics enforcement, right? Because otherwise, how do I show to my supervisor that I'm capable of doing this? And when I apply for a position and I'm competing against other individuals. And then you have other individuals that are, they have a variety of different jobs, traffic, who want to ride a motorcycle. right, who focuses on traffic enforcement, who focuses on traffic safety, you know, and then we have those officers that sometimes who just want to be patrol officers, who just want to be an all-around good patrol officer, and part of that might be a lot about community engagement, walking in the middle of the business district, talking to these owners, working in the central business district. We have a lot of officers that have done this. For example, in downtown Silver Spring, we've got a corporal who's been down there probably for a good 20-plus years, who's enjoyed riding on a bicycle and engaging in our downtown business community. So there's a wide variety of what that looks like. And some officers are going to, again, focus more about what they feel like is their strengths. Now, again, we want officers that are all around to the best of our ability, but, you know, that's for supervisors to try to help shape, okay?
All right, that's helpful. Last question, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Sorry. Just about the marijuana citations. I remember this bill well in Annapolis when it passed. Could you guess which percentage of these are juveniles and which are adults? Because I know they're treated differently.
So they are treated differently, but we could get those numbers, but I don't want to guess on to what that looks like.
So you're right. I understand you're now a $25 civil citation, unless you're juveniles treated differently. But there's a policing approach question here and discretion that's available to you. And I think if you polled 1,000 of my constituents, I think they would say they want to see, like they would ask, many of them would ask, why are we even bothering with citations for marijuana if there's not individuals committing some crime, bothering people in some way. And I think if you polled them, they'd want to see a lot fewer citations for marijuana, a lot more citations for red lights, speeding, any kind of pedestrian hazard in our dense urban district that has, you know, way too many pedestrian safety problems. You know, and certainly they'd want to see more just policing of just neighborhood crimes against property, crimes against
Sure.
individuals. Would they be right to say, why are you spending so much time giving an increasing amount of citations to adults using marijuana and taking resources that are limited away from these other things?
So
Worry more about.
I can answer this in a couple of ways. I think that one thing that must be made clear is that, again, you know, we get calls for service on a daily basis about individuals smoking marijuana in public places. Okay? So all across this county, that still remains illegal to do. And when we do find individuals driving on our roadways, smoking marijuana while driving in cars. And then we do make arrests on for other different types of crimes. And individuals when they are arrested, they have marijuana on their possession. I don't know the numbers of those that we approach individuals and, you know, have these encounters, and marijuana is the only thing that we have. I will probably tell you that I'll guarantee you that every time somebody seizes marijuana doesn't guarantee that somebody gets a citation. And I will tell you this, that I know this, that every homicide that's been drug-related over the past 5 years in Montgomery County has been over marijuana. Every drug-related homicide that we've had in this county has been marijuana-related. It has nothing to do with cocaine, has nothing to do with any other drug but marijuana. That's troubling to me. That says to me that there's this drug that's out there that still creates some problems in our communities. And so with that being said, you know, again, we need to focus, again, on what are the most serious crimes that are occurring in our communities. And I don't find possession of marijuana, simply 10 grams or less, the most serious violation. I think $25 is appropriate for a citation if you are caught with it. Example, we have problems, and and I get it, it's an encounter, but it's not an arrest. We're doing what the legislature intended this to be, right? It's not our focus to only go into communities that are, for example, are impacted by marijuana. But when I have individuals that are doing it out in public and not in a private place, when they're doing it on our roadways, it does give me some pause. It's something that I think we could look more deeply into. Sort of how do we actually get to where we get to? For example, are we getting this as a result of other related calls? Are we getting to it because there are individuals that are being arrested for other things that impact us, right? That are impacted the community, and as a result thereof, marijuana is recovered, and therefore an individual is cited, and other things that they do. So,
Can I give you one quick example? Just to build on that real quick, the Halloween night over at Cider Mill, I had a whole team of officers from Montgomery Village team, my DCAT team, and all of a sudden a bunch of them disappeared. Where did they go? And a community member came up to us and said, hey, there's these guys doing X, Y, Z in the courtyard, and some of them ended up being gang members. And we got pulled away temporarily, made contact with those individuals, was able to identify, one or two of them had a warrant, and a couple of them have marijuana on them. And so that is a very typical engagement where we may write a marijuana citation, which is where a community member says, hey, there's suspicious persons over here, something's not going on right, we make an engagement encounter, and then it goes down that road.
Yeah. It would just, I hear everything you're saying. Thank you. That's helpful at sort of understanding it better. It would be helpful to have these numbers maybe disaggregated. How many times is it associated with a vehicle or a theft or some other crime, and how many times is it just like a kid sitting on a bench? Thanks.
And as we know, we were just handed this today, so we can look. You can please look into it.
absolutely will.
Councilmember Jawando, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Katz, and thank you all for being here. Picking up, I'll go reverse order because Councilmember Hucker was going down a line that I think is important on the disaggregation of the data. This council, I drafted a letter this council sent to the police department, then Acting Chief Hamill, asking for a series of things in response to the incident that happened in White Oak. I would like a general update on where, because it's been quite a bit of time, and I know there's been some issues there. But one of the things we asked for were the information on the trespass citations. And I didn't know this was going to be sitting here today, but it was asked how many have been issued, where have they been issued, to whom have they been issued. And one of the things, I know you're compiling those, my understanding, you can speak to this, but is that there are paper copies held at each district, and that part of the delay has been the photocopying of these at each district. I think there's a larger point here of disaggregation of data, whether it be the trespass orders, the marijuana citations, that it seems there's not a fulsome understanding of where we're issuing things, to whom, and why, and that information is not driving continuous improvement. So when you told me, Chief Jones, that these trespass orders were kept individually at each station in paper copy, and that there was no repository in Gaithersburg or anywhere else that understood the full review of where they've been issued and to whom, that's a area that troubled me, because I think we need to know that information to know whether we're doing it unintentionally or intentionally or any other way, in a way that's disparate and has an impact on people in a disparate way. And so you addressed the point about just the information in general on the letter, but just that larger disaggregation point, because I think there's a lot of areas, and a lot of Councilmember Hucker's questions are, well, who was this issued to, in what instance? I think we need to know that information, and I think leadership needs to know that information so that we can make better decisions.
So in response to the council's request for the data that you've requested, and I noted to you that we are working on that. We should be nearing the end. It's a lot of information for us to gather based upon your request. And so with all that, with all due respect, with the amount of personnel that we have, that, based upon us having to pull them away from their regular duties to actually compile this information, we are anticipating it to be to you all within a week, based upon all of what you have requested. Again, normally when we get these types of requests, we generally get about 30 days. And sometimes even within that, based upon the volume of it, it requires us to not even to meet that 30-day deadline. So I think we're around the 30-day mark now. So I will tell you that we're very close to getting what, as my latest update of last week, we're very close to getting that.
Thank
You have a good question as it relates to the data and the way it's put together. Based upon people's concerns, sometimes shapes us to have to change the way we gather information over time. That's clear. That's nothing new. We're committed to making those changes as it relates to that, to answer community questions and to give us better views of what that looks like. If I might add that clearly the last 2 years, this new law has just gone into place as it relates to marijuana over the last couple of years. And so we really haven't really dissected that, looking at the data information that's come out about the increase in citations, what that would look like. That was something for us to compile over a course of time. I think all police departments in Maryland probably would be doing the same thing when you really had to zero down on, where is this happening? Why is it happening? Where is it coming from, right? We want to know all of that for a variety of reasons as it relates to us managing on a daily basis and actually trying to do our best to prevent crime and to minimize crime, right? And to have a focus that says, okay, in this particular area, we always seem to have an issue with individuals that are in possession of marijuana. And why is that? Is there an educational process that we can go out? I mean, I've known officers who have spoken to individuals in this area because there's confusion. In Washington, D.C., where it's legalized, people cross the county line and they think it's legalized here too, okay? And so there's confusion, right, amongst the public. And so we have to educate people to say, no, you could do it in Washington, D.C., but it's not legal here. The same thing with medical marijuana. That's new, right? It's allowable here in Maryland. We have medical marijuana shops in our county that people are actually going in and buying for those purposes. But again, there's rules that go along with that, right? That still require them to do it not out in the public, but to do it at home or in a safe place. So with that being said, I mean, I would highly state that I don't think that there's any issue with us looking at configuring and looking at the numbers differently, capturing it, because what it requires us is to create different data sets that now we're able to capture that data. Is this connected to another arrest? Is it just because we responded to a call? Was it recovered on a traffic stop? What is all of that, and who are the people that were cited? What are race? What is their ages? All of those things, I think, would be vitally important to everyone.
I appreciate that, and I would agree. And I speak for myself. I think I speak for my colleagues. We want to be supportive of. I think with Data Montgomery and the databases you have, I think we have the sophisticated enough systems to do this type of data analytics. And if not, we need to know that too. But I would agree that it's critical to have that information. You mentioned with just staying on the trespass orders for a second, that because I think these impact community policing in a big way, right? You've had county executive and I had a roundtable with about 50 young people, men and women, up at Kennedy High School maybe a week and a half ago, or now time's running together. And one of the things that we asked them, I said, how many people in this room have been, and they were all in various groups, brothers and LAYC, they were all relatively engaged, kids that are more connected probably than some, were asked how many have received a trespass order. And about half the room, 20 or so kids, raised their hand. Blew me away. I think county executive was shocked. Now, obviously, that's not a statistical analysis, but there's a pre-selected group of students. And so I just think, but one thing that was clear, regardless of the numbers, they had all been psychologically impacted by that in a way that, as they shared their stories, gave them a view of the law enforcement that was not extremely positive. And so one of the things I think we have to think about with these trespass orders, and I want to ask you a question about, is, again, wide discretion. You mentioned that, the other thing I'm sure we'll get back from you here shortly is how many of these businesses have given you all authority to act as their agents and enforce trespass, even though there might not have been a call or no one's asked the person there to leave, and how we're doing that. But if you're talking about community policing, it's all about building the relationship, making sure people feel trust and feel good about engaging with law enforcement. I think the way I'm curious to know, and from these students, the way we're using these trespass orders against whom can actually work against that. So I think that's something we need to look at. The other thing I'm concerned about, and you mentioned this, you might have been talking about the marijuana citation, but you mentioned that you can go and have it go to the district court to appeal. And my understanding with the trespass orders, which are warnings of if you come back here within 12 months, this location, you're going to be subject to arrest for criminal trespass, which is state law. My understanding is that there is no appeals mechanism for a trespass order. And am I correct in that? You can comment on the earlier statement.
So the first thing about the negative impact when you have a trespass order when you're giving it to a youth, probably the most disheartening thing about policing is that sometimes we have to issue things to people that they don't necessarily like to get. I don't think there's anybody in this room, including the three of us that sit at this table, appreciate getting a parking ticket, appreciate getting a speeding ticket, a speed camera ticket, and definitely not a school bus camera ticket, right, based upon the price of it.
You hear about those a lot.
I know you do, right? And when law enforcement, and this is not new in policing, over the course of time, it's probably the most, I don't know the best adjective to utilize, but I would say individuals don't like getting tickets, and we, unfortunately, are the ones who have to give them, are given the authority to give them, which then requires someone to have a negative impact on, on them as a result of them receiving that ticket. And dealing with our young people, it doesn't change that either, right? And I think all of that, inclusive, right, has some impact upon the image of policing in this country, okay? We have a responsibility to enforce laws. Well, there are people that don't like, that sometimes those authority figures when it comes time to actually enforce those laws. And we understand that, right? There's empathy, there's this compassion that you must have when you deal with individuals. Every situation, in my mind, even though collectively over time we all have experiences, that says that this won't have a very negative impact if I don't issue a citation or give a warning here for this trespass order, okay? And may just say, don't come back. But sometimes, we have individuals that create such a problem in particular communities. And part of us, when we're dealing with these as the agents of these properties, some of the people the employees of these establishments are local employees that live in the same neighborhoods in which these individuals come in and create problems. These individuals are at times even afraid to actually confront these individuals to address the problems that they're creating in their establishments. And so this is one of the reasons why these individuals are made agents of the property. While we're made agents of the property, in order to alleviate that fear for those individuals that are, quote, I would call them the victims of behavior of some of those, of the establishments as to why we're there. Well, and it's a wide variety of individuals that we might be dealing with. The youth are part of that, but they're not the only part of it. I've been a part of trespass orders where, though there is no appeal process, I've been a part of trespass orders that we've rescinded as a result of further conversations with the individuals involved, understanding the true nature of exactly what was going on, and having some compassion to that we've actually rescinded orders.
Just to be clear, there is no appeals process.
But there is no appeals process. You're exactly right. And so, and unless the business itself says, that says we're okay with, rescinding for this particular property. Just like we have in county government when we have individuals who create disturbances here in the county, even though, again, I understand there's a process of hearing that they get. But again, it requires to have us to be able to address the issue as warranted. There's other reasons why we're trespass agents where you have, for example, I've given the example of an apartment complex large apartment complexes that have given our officers the ability to be agents of the property for the fact of individuals who come on their properties and cause problems within their communities. Individuals who actually have, for example, have created issues of domestic violence or continue to come back and haunt their so-called victims, their significant others or exes. And this is a way of not arresting the individual, but basically warning that individual not to come back on the property because of the disturbance that they created. So that's just a couple of examples of where we are with this. But again, I think it does warrant that, that people have to understand there is discretion by officers that are utilized daily. They make a decision, like the officers who work in our central business district, who are confronted with a lot of times, like some of our folks who might have mental issues in downtown Silver Spring. I'll just use that as an example, that they know them well, right? They'll tell them, look, don't come back here. And if they know that it continuously becomes a problem, then they have to utilize that tool.
I appreciate that. And I just have one more question, if that's okay. And I think the discretion is important because knowing the data is important in order to know with whom discretion is being used and where, right? If we look at these numbers, which we'll see, I won't prejudge, but of these, 1,000 or so folks who received trespass orders last year, who are they? Where are they? It might tell us discretion is being used because there's certainly people standing outside of places, a lot of places, in different ways. So I think that's important for that discussion of are we using discretion the right way? I am concerned about the lack of potentially due process and the ability to rescind appeal these orders. I met with one young man who had two in the same community, one from 7-Eleven and one from McDonald's in White Oak, had never been charged with a crime, but can't go to two places in his neighborhood where there's not a lot of food. and so I think that we need to look into an ability to appeal those at a minimum, as well as how they're being used. The other question is back to Chairman Katz's. He mentioned something that I've talked about the performance evaluation and how we're looking into community policing or community contacts vis-a-vis other things that are looked at, obviously how an officer spends their day, arrest, tickets, the whole range of things. Another tenet of community policing, and I think this has been utilized in other areas, is that there's been evaluation systems, performance evaluation systems that have been designed to evaluate officers based on community policing and community contacts. And so when you mentioned the rating system, which it would be great to see, are there any metrics or data that are used in those rating system categories? I'm assuming every day the officers coming in, you said they talk to their supervisor. I did X, I did this. I made this arrest, went to this community event, did that. And there's notes written down is what you described by the supervisor. Is what goes into those ratings, does it produce a number? Is it could you just talk a little bit more about how that information translates to the rating system?
So overall, there are no numbers that are basically transmitted in the rating. There might, for example, there might be a number of a range, right, that we provide in a category for our DUI enforcement as an example. Okay.
So there is a range.
So we would have a range of how many DUI arrests you would make in a year, right? And it helps us because the ratings themselves are a part of the performance of the FOP member, which again goes to our labor contract.
For sure.
So we can't just go in and change because we want to without negotiating with the union exactly what we are actually going to change. That's going to be because that's a part of our bargaining process. So with that being said, again, officers, are noted, and good supervisors will pay attention to how many traffic tickets, someone has writing. If I've got an officer who's only conducting one traffic stop every 30 days, I think that's a problem, right? I think that's a problem. If I have somebody who, particularly if I've got an area that involves speeding, involves red light violations, involves pedestrian safety, that's a problem.
Would it also be a problem if that same officer only went to one community event in 30 days?
Well, it might, but again, the point being is that it's what is a community event defined as, right? So what is it defined as? So the philosophy of what we do every day, depending upon the area in which you work, defines what exactly are you responsible for that particular area. For example, so there may only be one community event, for example, an officer who works the evening shift, right, in his particular area or area of responsibility during that time of that they work during that period of time. So it might be that you only might have one event. But what else is going on in the community that that person engages in? From a community policing standpoint, how is that documented? What is that individual doing that's extra, right? I've got officers who do mentoring on the side, but while, so those officers, again, are credited given that the supervisor knows that. He may not put it down for every month, but he knows. I've got an officer that a group of officers that mentor out at Briggs Taney Middle School every month. They've been with a group of kids since they were at Burtonsville Elementary, and I was a part of that we followed as a commander. And we sporadically go up and we talk to these kids and we engage with these kids. These are things, that's just an example, right, of what's going on that's beyond, quote, a community event. But again, it's the responsibility of those that are supervising those individuals. And we, for example, I might send a note to the director, the captain of that particular individual, say, hey, this officer did X amount of things, or we get good guy letters that says that, of things that sometimes we don't even assign them to do, right? That they're doing on taking the initiative and doing it on their own. So, but it's important that it's documented, right? That's the important part.
I agree,
right?
and I think, one of the things we should look into is how do we help you document that, or help the department, or have that be a leadership mandate to document that in a better way, because it's, again, I've seen those boards that Sydney mentioned about officer with 1 arrest, officer with 100, just using numbers for example. And that, whether it's a quota or not, that sets an expectation. If I walk into that room, I walk and see that, my name's on the bottom and someone's name's on the top. Just human nature is like, I'm not doing a good job, I am doing a good job. And even if it's not said, go out and get X number, which I know you're not doing. But if I don't see on that, and that doesn't have to be an event. I actually think events are probably on the range of community policing activities, probably in the middle or the bottom third. I think there are a lot more impactful things. Some of the things you mentioned, the mentoring, the individual interactions. And Officer Patel, you mentioned 1,200 outreach events just started tracking in 2016, which I wonder why then, but just then. And you said something that was interesting. Good job doing the work, less so tracking the info. That was your quote. And I would agree, I'm going to let you respond, but I think we need to figure out a way to track that info, I think, in a better way. And to your point of what is a community event or what's a community contact, if there is an implicit system of looking at arrests and tickets, which there is, at least in some districts, that, like to your point, if someone has one traffic ticket in 30 days, that's not good, and they're going to be kicked in the butt, and that's probably right. But there needs to be also for community events and community contacts, that there needs to be an additional column and or tracking metric. And I just think we really need to help you. I just wanted to hear more from you about that. Do you agree with that? Because when I talk to labor, when I talk to FOP, you talk about negotiating, I think they want this. They want to have, at least that's what they tell us.
Well, all I would tell you is, if that was true, we would still have the MCP 16. So if labor tells you that it was true that they still want this, then let's bring back the MCP 16. That tracked everything. So that would be my response to that, because I think that was a good thing. I never found that to be negative as when I worked, because I went out and, we did our jobs. You go out and do your jobs, hey, Sarge, you saw that I wrote 10 reports today, so I couldn't have the ability to do something else because I was busy out writing reports because they had 10 houses burglarized in a particular community. Okay? So I agree with you that that's fine. I'm good with that. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to have to negotiate with the FOP to come up with a way. Now we can figure out, and Assistant Chief Patel is going to give you a response as to we ran into some of the problems, and part of us, while we started tracking this in 16, was when we looked at what was going on across this country in policing, the 21st century on policing and community engagement. And we decided to make this a priority to really show the community what were we doing. Now, again, there's always breakdown in communications over time. You have changes in command, you have changes in responsibilities, and people sometimes we sometimes miss the boat on that. But the point being is that I think if we're going to follow through with this, that if we want to be able to be more specific in tracking those individual officers' performance like that, then that to me that needs to be on the table, about us having the ability to have that form.
And I don't know what's on that form. We should see it, but but I agree. But
it's gone now.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Yeah.
Can we see the old one too?
Yeah.
I'd like to see it.
I'm sure we'd probably
We
could
could
find
it
it
somewhere.
It predates me, like 20. They didn't have it when I came
Just
on.
do a time check for you. We're going to try to end this by noon. So,
Yep.
okay.
So, just to answer your question, when you hear about traffic tickets or warnings or a repair order, statistically, it's easy to track because when you go write that ticket on a computer, because what we do is electronic now, it has all of my information, the offender's information, time, date, GPS location. It's a very robust way to capture information. So, click a report at the end of the month or end of the year, whatever it is, you can find out exactly what has been going on, per officer. Because while you're doing the work of writing the ticket, the data is being captured. You don't have to do anything extra. For community policing efforts, we're not writing a ticket, right, or a citation. So if we go to a community engagement event, as an example, then somebody has to come and say, oh, by the way, we got to put this in the calendar. And we have a tool that we use from the county, DTS, that the county was already using. And it's not perfect. I think that we have an opportunity, I agree with you, to look at how to capture data better, but it's a little gooey from the standpoint of, how do you define it to Chief Jones's role? Meetings, events, that part's kind of easy. I think we actually do a pretty good job. The challenge to us, and for Community Engagement Division as part of leading this effort, is going to be, how do you capture the informal? How do you capture that officer, define it? And that's the part where anytime I think you have a human being that has to do extra work to capture the data, there's always going to be a challenge in getting the data. That's why on tickets, arrests, even reports, the reports are electronic. So the officer completes a police report. They don't realize that they captured information statistically that shows that they're doing that thing.
Right.
So it's a challenge that we have to.
And I agree, and I think that's why we need to find a way to capture it. Because if I'm just person 101 officer or not, and I know this very detailed information is going to be tracked, and it's going to be put on a board potentially in something, and this other thing that may be a good thing, but that is very hard to track, and it's going to take me extra time to enter in, and I may or may not get any credit for it. Even if take bias off the table, you're going to spend your time on the things that you know you're going to get credit for, and so that's why we have to, I think, I agree with you, that's a problem because it changes the way we police. And if someone walked in and knew, if they were in White Oak and there was a break-in in my neighborhood in White Oak, and they went in and talked to like 10 youth and just had a dialogue, hey, have you heard anything that's going on and what's going on? Things that probably already happening. And no tickets were issued, no citations were written, but they got valuable information and they got a couple of people that in case they see something, they're going to report it back. If there's no way to value that and to track that, then it's either some people are going to do it because they just want to do it, but it's going to be less likely to be an institutional way of doing business because you have these other incentive structures. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what your point. I think the challenge ahead of us is how do we do that accurately, fairly, consistently across the enterprise. Sure. And we know that going into that's going to be the challenge. But
what I would also add is that, again, supervision and monitoring the behavior is important. And therefore, the supervisors are accountable to knowing what their employees are doing. And they know about what they're supposed to be gathering the intelligence, doing those types of interactions. They know the officers that do that. They document those officers that do that. And if they don't, then they're failing their employees about exactly what they're doing. So all of this, even though it might not be, when you say, what we are encouraging our people to do, the encouragement really does not come from that board. The encouragement comes from those supervisors directly giving them direct direction of exactly what they want. So if you had you have a supervisor who says, I want you going out there making 10 arrests this month, or I want you going out there writing X amount of tickets this month, that's not what we teach our supervisors to do. And if they're doing that, then that's wrong. Okay, that's not the purpose of the direction of how we all, to say you got to catch up with Officer X over here because this person has already written 100 tickets this month or made 10 arrests or whatever, and you got to catch him. If they're doing that, that's wrong. That's the wrong direction, and that needs to be corrected right from the very beginning. Okay.
I appreciate
Thank you very much. Councilmember Albornoz has been very patient here.
Thank you, Councilmember. Very patient.
No, well, first of all, I want to thank you guys. I've been looking forward to this session for quite some time because obviously this is a critically important issue always, but especially now. So I'm going to try to be concise to get us out of here as close as 12 as possible. But I do have a lot of questions regarding areas we haven't touched on yet, but do very much associate myself and appreciate the questions and comments made by my colleagues. Do want to start by acknowledging I was deeply moved by the funeral service for Officer Ollinger last week and express my condolences. I know all of us do for the incredible work of your department. And also just want to state that as the director of the Recreation Department, had the opportunity to work directly with all of you for 12 years on a lot of community policing opportunities and programs and services. And actually, both of you happened to speak to students that Excel Beyond the Bell was the program you were referring to on multiple occasions. And so there are many positive examples that have historically been ingrained in this police department in valuing the efforts of community policing. Acknowledging that community policing means different things to different people and different things to different communities. The fact that there are 12 officers per every 10,000 residents is crazy. The District of Columbia has over 80 for a population half our size. And so we're not putting our police officers in the best position to be able to conduct community policing, let alone the tasks that they've been given. And while we can assign and give job descriptions specifically to people within units, I appreciated your comments, Chief Jones, about this needing to be ingrained in the social fabric and in the DNA of the entire department. But you guys aren't robots. And so everybody does bring a different skill set, a different interest. Some are more comfortable speaking to large groups. Some are more reserved. Some are more comfortable speaking to youth than other members of the force. And so I think, acknowledging all of that is really important. But I did have a few questions specifically that we haven't touched on yet. One is our immigrant community. So as we know, our federal government has not done us any favors with regards to their rhetoric and the trust that has really been called into question between government and our various communities. Can you please talk about some of your efforts to specifically with regards to community policing to combat some of the rhetoric at the national level that they were hearing to ensure that people still feel comfortable acknowledging when incidents arise and reaching out proactively to the various police departments? And if you can provide some assurance or some discussion that no immigration questions are asked by our officers and where that's written into policy and how that's being enacted. If you could spend a few minutes talking about that area, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, thank you. And I appreciate just really quickly that you and Councilman Katz did attend Officer Ollinger's memorial service. That was heart-wrenching, and the officers really did appreciate that. And thank you for the words. I will say that that always is a challenge, right, with us, with our immigrant community. But I am thankful. I remember during my course of time in Silver Spring that I would have community groups reach out to us and bring us to community meetings to talk about policing and ICE and illegal immigration issues all across the board, and to be able to answer those folks' questions. I remember even going to a PTA meeting at one of the elementary schools in the Long Branch community in order to be able to talk to the many of the parents who were scared to really even ask the questions, but they would utilize, liaison to actually ask their question and anything that we could provide to them about, what happens if ICE comes knocking on your door, and what are your rights when a police officer knocks on your door, and do you have to answer the door, and what's your expectation of privacy? And we told them, and I would answer questions like, a police officer knocks on your door and you're not sure they're the police, you think they're somebody else, make them show their ID. Our officers are required to show their ID, and if they don't show, and if they don't, then don't open the door, right? And I would also state that you have every right to pick up the phone and call 911 and ask, because if we have officers standing at your door, it's highly likely that those officers already have called out with that address, and if not, the officer they will respond to the officer via the radio to say, are you standing at such and such address, wherever that might be, and the citizen is asking for you to show your ID and verifying that who you say you are. And so that has continuously been done. We continuously are committed to continue doing that, because again, we know that this is a work that needs to be done continuously, in a way that the community, even though again, I clearly with all of the negative rhetoric coming out of Washington and it making people feel more unsafe than when we were doing this in the first place. And it probably lends to more mistrust based upon law enforcement efforts in order to address issues. We have victims that are afraid to report crimes. And we talked about this many times when I was a 3rd District Commander, whether even we were getting real data about what was going on in the community, because we had people who were scared to call and they were victims of domestic violence. They were victims of robbery. They were victims of other types of crimes, but they felt as if they called the police, they would be deported, or because we would ask the questions. Well, we don't. That's not our policy. We don't ask questions about immigration status to any of our citizens for no reason. There's no reason that we do that. And if anybody does that, they're in violation of our policy. And officers know that. We reiterated at training and reiterated when they're rookies to make sure that they understand that when they come out in the streets. And we give those messages out frequently about making sure people are adhering to this policy that we've been doing for quite some time now. But again, we have to continuously state that message, right? And we have to and our command staffs go out in the community, and they are dialoguing with our communities. We do some interactions with CASA on new immigrants who are getting their license. And how they deal with the police and what are they required to show, and when they have that encounter, what that looks like. So there's a level of engagement, right, from many facets of communities. But again, there's still a barrier because we know that many folks are coming from countries where policing is militarized in the highest level. Policing looks different, right? It's not policing like in America. It's not policing like in Montgomery County. So we have to be very clear in our deliverance of the message to make sure people understand that. About what are the services that we provide to them. And we try to connect to them in the most humane way possible. Particularly, it's sometimes we're even going through their kids, right? By going to the schools, going to recreational facilities and other facilities throughout the county where the kids, who maybe are a little bit more comfortable because they see us more often in a different way. And so that's important for us to continue to develop those relationships over time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And all of us have work to do there. I chair the Health and Human Services Committee, and we have seen a precipitous decline in the people accessing public health programs that they can access for fear that is somehow going to connect to their legal status. So, and working with our faith-based community is going to be important there. You had mentioned tests earlier that people take in order to get promotional activities. Is community policing part of those tests? Are there questions related to community policing on those tests? And if you could give us a couple of examples of what those might look like, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, so in the process of writing the test, right? We are, in fact, our in-house. We design the test the way that we deem that best fits Montgomery County, because we feel like we own this, right? And we own it in a way that we have the expectation of supervision of what that looks like. And so we create different types of questions, for example, for sergeants, for them to be able to answer and even orally respond back to us about how they would engage in community policing, for example, an effort to calm issues that are going on in the community. We actually put them through maybe like a test of that they actually are going to a community meeting. And they're going to address a community concerns, and they have to verbally articulate, right, their plan of action, and how they're going to interact and how they're going to direct their officers to actually solve this issue with the community. And what does that look like? And the best candidates are going to really be engaging primarily in community partnerships and designing, their sort of plan of action and submitting that to their lieutenant or captain, what they think is the best way to actually solve this. So that's something that we take that very seriously. That you always have that component designed into our test taking to make sure that they understand the importance of community policing that it goes to their role as a result to creating issues that resolve problems in public safety.
That's good to hear. And if those tests are weighted in any way, obviously providing more weight to those specific questions regarding community policing makes sense.
Yeah.
As people are interviewed, and I know we're struggling with just getting people to walk through the door to take the job in the first place, but as people are interviewed, are there community policing questions asked during the interview process when we're interviewing candidates for the upcoming class?
Yeah, so the hiring process is rigorous, right? From a written test to a physical test, and yes, a 3-person interview panel is part of that. And part of what they're trying to assess, of course, is are people going to do the right thing? Number one, right? Cops have to be truthful and honest. But part of that, is how are you engaging with another human being, which is a little bit of a struggle generationally now, anyway. But it's built upon what's that human engagement like, and how are you going to interact with the public? Like how it's I'm just kind of using a broad example. Somebody comes in and says, my goal in life is to write 10,000 tickets a month or something like that's not the 3-person panel has a little bit of latitude in that realm, that we're looking for well-rounded people that can interact with the public and understand that it's much more than enforcement, and that you have to be trusted, interact, community, have an ability to be able to communicate and I think listen. So
okay,
yeah, that's
good.
That overall process.
And to that point, the human engagement is obviously the most important, but we live in a very socially media-driven world. I know that the gang unit, as an example, secured some additional funds to track social media for obvious investigative purposes, but I think there's an element to community policing now that should be include social media platforms in which we're engaging on that level at a community standpoint,
right,
acknowledging that we have barely enough officers to meet the demand that's out there. Do you have officers assigned to, or the ability to have people, particularly within each station, engage in from a social media platform to track what's going on in the community, but also to engage in conversations and dialogues as those things are happening?
Sure. So there's a couple things going on with that. Chief Jones and I think we're proud we're the first 2 commanders that were on Twitter accounts because we saw the need and the utility of that. And so there's social media happens in several different ways. We talked about Nextdoor and the growth in that space. And that tends to be a little bit more kind of HOA related, I would say. Our public information office does a high volume of social media every day, whether it's Facebook or Twitter. And then our community engagement division has launched off. There's some fresh blood in there of people. And I say it from the standpoint that they live social media much more than a lot of us maybe who didn't grow up with it. And one of the things that they're trying to do and have started is doing this kind of, get to know the police department videos, quick little vignettes, if you will, on YouTube that are going to be published where they come in. I don't know if we've published it yet. Commander Yamada, I won't spoil it, but he's got a really good story. I think as a local community member, as a coach, as a father, as a cop. And they kind of followed him throughout his day, and we had some great video editing capability that they've brought on. So they're going to start going through the department with that, trying to get that out to the public. Just again, bridge that gap, get to know who we are and what we're doing in a communication mode that frankly young people and I think one of the things that came out years ago, not great with the date, but we were going around doing town halls, and I remember a young lady down at Montgomery College stood up and she goes, "Hey, it's great you have all these meetings. What are you doing to talk to us?" Right? The teens and the 20-somethings. I think we woke up a little bit in that moment. Our recruitment unit also does a lot of social media. Because again, we realize that that's where we have to communicate. So to me, I think we continue to double down on that effort going forward. But we absolutely realize that, and I had the opposite experience where I talked about a bunch of technology and social media things we're doing in Montgomery Village. And this lady raised her hand in the back room. I don't know if Rose was there that day or not. She raised her hand. She goes, "I don't have a computer. I don't have a phone. I read the newspaper." And that, to me, also realized, okay, we have to communicate across all these different modes. And social media is certainly a huge part of it, but I see us only increasing in that realm going forward.
And if I could just quickly add is the fact that I have just met with our PIO to really kind of emphasize, and I'm working with the PIO and we'll be working with the command staffs to increase that level of communication that's more directly coming out of the stations and giving and shooting it out so that we can get it out more often and frequently. And I agree, there has to be a wide variety of platforms that we're utilizing because, again, if I'm dealing with Asbury Senior Assistant Living Home or Leisure World, they communicate differently than our young people, right? So we've got to keep that in mind and not make sure we're not missing folks just because we're intentionally trying to move ourselves up in the world. And in the 21st century, you might at a faster pace, but we don't want to leave people behind just the same.
Last two comments or questions. So the fastest growing demographic in the county are actually senior citizens by a large margin. And so such social isolation is a huge issue, and we've seen a pretty significant increase in senior population being victims of crime. It's challenging, clearly, but from a community policing standpoint, what steps are you taking to try and provide more of a safety net for our older adults?
Sure. So just last week we were at the World Abuse Conference down at Holiday Park Center. And it highlighted, I wish that many people were there because I know Councilman Katz, it just highlights some issues that are occurring in our seniors in their lives. And we are really pushing and continue to push our community service officers in the district to maintain those relationships with those types of communities all throughout the county. And most importantly, we're seeing the increases of fraud, right, that are impacting our seniors at a high level. So we also have our detectives who have done several seminars in many of our communities, really trying to make it known to our seniors that they are very vulnerable. And unfortunately, these bad folks are actually targeting them because they know how kind they are, they know how giving they are, and they'll take advantage of them. And we're really trying to put them on notice. And then the problem comes about, as it was highlighted in the conference last week, that many of them might be victims of these crimes, similar to the immigrants, but they were so embarrassed by what's happened to them, the amount of money that they've lost or what they actually did, that they don't want to report it. And then that could be detrimental to our community. So we want to make sure that we're getting that message, and we're working with different county agencies such as HHS and beyond to be able to make sure that message is resonating throughout. Okay.
And two quick things at that point, just to demonstrate that it's happening on a regular basis. As one example, in the 6th District, my community services officer there, Kim Jones, regularly, almost weekly, if not every other week, does a Keeping Seniors Safe presentation, like Sunrise Assisted Living, or may go to Asbury. So that's part of her strength that she plays to, and so she does that. And I know, as another example, in the 2nd District, Also, Stroman down there has a program where she goes to the movies with seniors, and before they watch a movie during the middle of the day at ArcLight or wherever which theater they go to, she takes the time to make those presentations about senior safety. So absolutely on point.
Good idea. That's a
Trying
great
to-
idea.
Yeah, have time during the middle of the day to go see a movie. So take
Right.
the opportunity to share some time with them.
I'll end with that question and just make one suggestion or comment. So we Councilmember Joando's made this point, and I could not agree with him more, that we need to uplift and quantify those more positive measures. And community policing obviously is really important in that sense, whether it be through assessments, evaluations, tests. But I do also think, I'll give you just a very quick example. Paul LaCourie, when he was a patrol officer in an area that my wife happened to be running a food pantry, would come on his own time to deliver food to and from Costco. And there are hundreds of examples of that every day, of officers going way above and beyond on their own time. And I do think there's an opportunity for us to elevate stories like that. And so I've had preliminary conversations with Councilmember Jawando, and we will be with all of our colleagues as well. But to create some sort of formal acknowledgement, and maybe on National Night Out, within each district, we highlight one or two examples of that taking place, so that we uplift and encourage more of that activity and acknowledge how critical it is to the fabric of policing, particularly today.
And if I could take a quick moment to a shameless plug, but I would ask that you all, if you have the opportunity to attend our quarterly award ceremony, because a lot of times we are highlighting just that.
Great.
Those types of performances that are going on by our officers, but a point well taken. We have them generally about every quarter, but we'll make sure that you get the invites out, okay? But I would say your point is well taken to highlight them in other venues as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, real fast.
Very quick.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Councilmember Albanaz, because I think that's important. The other thing, an idea that came out of our session, which seemed very interesting, were these kind of, I don't call them officer-friendly cards, but like after an officer has an interaction with the resident, hey, I'm X so-and-so, go write something about your experience, good, bad, or ugly, survey type thing. Another way to, that was mentioned. I think some people are doing it somewhere where, it's just a card they pass and it's actually community providing the input. So when these things happen, there's another way you can go on. People review everything, whether it be their local restaurant or, it could be the 3rd District Police Station, a way to actually have that. And it could be helpful to management to get good, good things and things that aren't negative. You hear complaints, but it's a way to actually hear a positive thing as well.
Okay, good.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you. And I do think, just first up, for the quarterly awards, I attend them, and we probably should put that out much more than we do. I mean, the fact that the person getting the award and their family knows it is not nearly enough, and so that's something that we should do here as well. We should acknowledge it somehow. For the whole idea for recruiting, we need to also, not only for recruiting, but we need to have speed and when we offer somebody a job, because our competition is faster than we are, and you can say that for the school system and other places as well, and for the county in general. We need to be able to be faster than what we're doing so that we can make certain that the people are there. And my last point that I wanted to make is that if you had, and I guess this is to the captain, and this will be not an answer today, but if you had additional officers, what additional programs would you be able to do, and how many more people would you need, and all of those sorts of things? We're going to need to get that kind of an answer, please.
So I've actually been thinking about that. Because I'm new, one of the things I have committed to doing is actually being quiet and listening. So I've gathered quite a few ideas while I was just sitting here today and made a note about a decentralized type of community engagement division that I'll have to talk to my superiors about. But if I could, because I am new and I want you to know my way of thinking, the chief mentioned 21st century policing, and not only do we focus on community policing and crime prevention, but the transparency and accountability part is really important to Montgomery County citizens, obviously. I attended the forum a couple of weeks ago, and what I got from that, if I had to encapsulate it into one sentence is that although we do a really good job as a police department spending time having the community understand what we do, I think we could probably do a little better job seeking understanding from the community, because I had some eye-opening experiences listening to how people really felt about us, and I not for one moment believe that they hate the police in our community. They love the police, as a matter of fact. But I also felt some pain and some anger and some fear, and I think that we could probably address that. It would take some courageous moves and conversations, but I do think that it's doable. So that's what I'm going to be thinking about.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that we're going to have the courage to do it. Okay, is there anything else on?
And that's it. I'll keep in contact with the department, get the information that you asked, and forward it to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being with us.
County Fair in the summer and the state fair, and then they are able to win awards for their hard work.
Well, as president of the Kids and Dogs Club, I'm responsible for coordinating emails between club members to communicate with them